I dreamed of fire before I ever knew what the Throne Mechanicum truly was. Flames that did not burn but sang, that crawled through my veins like hymns made molten, that whispered in voices I almost recognized. My mother told me these were merely the excitement of a young aspirant, the natural anticipation of one born to greatness. I believed her. I was 18 standard Terran years old, and I still believed my mother. That seems so very long ago now, though the chrono markers on the chamber wall tell me it has been only 17 days since they opened my skull and poured something ancient and hungry into the space where my certainty used to live. My name was Cailan Vorthrace, of House Thrace, third child of Lady Margrave Vorthrace, designated pilot aspirant since my 7th naming day. I say was, not because I am dead, though perhaps that would have been simpler. I say was, because the thing that speaks these words now, that remembers being Cailan Vorthrace, is no longer certain where Cailan ends and the others begin. There are so many others. They breathe when I breathe. They remember when I remember. And sometimes, in the quiet hours when the tech adepts think I am resting, I hear them arguing about which of us gets to be real. House Thrace has held dominion over the world of Cordith Prime for 3,700 years. Our ancestral knight, *Fury Unbroken*, has walked these rust-colored plains since the Age of Strife, a relic of humanity's forgotten golden age, a machine so old that the tech priests of Mars whisper prayers just to be permitted into its maintenance hangars. I grew up in its shadow. Literally, our fortress keep was built around its resting cradle, and my nursery window looked out upon its left greave, a wall of ceramite and adamantine that blocked the setting sun. I would press my small hands against the cold armorplars and feel something pulse beneath, something that was not quite mechanical vibration. My nurse servitors would pull me away, muttering about the cold, about the drafts, about anything except what I had felt. The cold. That should have been my first warning. The cold that seeped from Fury Unbroken's resting form was not the cold of metal in shadow. It was the cold of something waiting, something patient, something that had learned to wait through centuries of false dawns and broken promises, through pilots who came and went like seasons, like breath, like the brief, bright sparks of mortal lives against the eternal dark of the void. I felt that cold the night before my bonding ceremony, when I was permitted for the first time to enter the sanctum alone. They dressed me in ceremonial robes of crimson and gold, the colors of our house, and they painted sacred unguents upon my brow that smelled of machine oil and something older, something organic that I could not identify. The sacristans, those servants of the machine god who tended to Fury Unbroken's physical form, lined the processional hall, their faces hidden beneath hoods of red, their augmetic eyes glowing like distant stars in the darkness. None of them spoke. None of them needed to. Their silence was itself a kind of sermon. The sanctum was cold. So cold that my breath crystallized in the air, that the ceremonial silks against my skin felt like sheets of ice, that my fingers went numb before I had walked 10 steps into the darkness. But I had been prepared for cold. I had been told that the machine spirit of an Imperial Knight ran cold when idle, that this was merely the reactor at rest, that warmth would come with awakening. No one had prepared me for the sensation of being watched. Not watched by eyes. Fury Unbroken's optical sensors were dark, powered down, empty sockets in a skull of scarred ceramite, but watched by something that did not need eyes to see. Watched from within, watched from a place that had no physical location, that existed in the spaces between my thoughts. I stood before my family's night, and I felt, for the first time, that I was not alone inside my own mind. The dreams had started 3 months before, when I was formally confirmed as pilot aspirant. My elder siblings Thessan and Mark had both shown incompatibility during their preliminary neural mapping, a mercy I did not understand at the time. They were shipped off to other duties within the household. Thessan to the Administratum liaison offices and Marke to the household guard, their blood still noble but their futures forever earthbound. I remember the relief on their faces when the rejection was announced. I thought they were simply jealous of my success, my compatibility, my destiny. I called them cowards in my private thoughts. I prayed to the Emperor to make me worthy of what they could not achieve. He answered, "I suppose," or something did. The dreams were always the same. I would be walking through the halls of our fortress, but the halls would stretch and twist, the familiar architecture becoming alien, becoming hostile. Doors would appear where no doors should be, leading down into darkness that breathed and whispered, and in those corridors I would hear footsteps not my own echoing from behind me, from ahead of me, from within the walls themselves. Footsteps of iron on stone, heavy and deliberate, rhythmic as a heartbeat. I would run, and the footsteps would keep pace, never gaining, never falling behind, simply accompanying me through the labyrinth of my own sleeping mind. I never saw who made those footsteps, but sometimes, just before waking, I would catch glimpses of faces in the dark, faces I almost recognized. Faces that looked like my own but wrong, subtly wrong, wearing expressions I had never worn, bearing scars I had never earned. They would mouth words I could not hear, and I would wake with the taste of copper on my tongue and the absolute certainty that someone had been standing beside my bed, watching me sleep. I told no one about the dreams. I was afraid, though I would never have admitted this, that they might disqualify me, that they might be symptoms of neural incompatibility, that I might end up earthbound like my siblings. So I smiled through the medical examinations, the neural mapping sessions, the countless interviews with robed figures who asked me to describe my relationship with machines, with faith, with authority, with pain. I told them what they wanted to hear. I told them I was ready. I told them I was born for this. In a way, I suppose I was. The morning of the bonding ceremony dawned grey and cold, the sun hidden behind the perpetual cloud cover that clung to Cordeth Prime like a shroud. My mother came to my chambers while I was still being dressed by the household servitors, her face bearing that particular expression of aristocratic neutrality that I had learned, over 18 years, to read as masked emotion. Pride, I thought at the time. Pride and perhaps a touch of the inevitable maternal sadness at watching a child leave the nest. I did not know then that what I saw in her eyes was guilt. "You understand what today means," she said. It was not a question. "I do, Mother. I am honored beyond words." Honored. She repeated the word as if testing it, as if checking it for hidden edges. "Yes, you have always been such an honorable child, Kaelin. So eager to serve, so willing to sacrifice." I did not understand the weight she placed on that final word, sacrifice. I thought she meant my freedom, my future, my chance at a normal life. I thought she meant the pain of the bonding process, which I had been warned about in general terms: the surgery, the neural interface, the initial shock of machine communion. I did not understand that she meant something far more permanent, something far more absolute. She kissed my forehead before she left, and her lips were cold. The bonding chamber was located in the deepest levels of our fortress, in halls that had not been renovated since the Age of Strife, in spaces that predated human habitation of Cordeth Prime. The walls were not constructed, they were carved, hewn from the living rock of the planet's crust, smoothed by hands that might not have been entirely human. Imperial aquillas had been chiseled into the stone at regular intervals, but they looked somehow wrong, somehow incomplete, as if they were covering older symbols that still showed through in certain lights. The air was thick with incense, with the chemical tang of sacred oils, with the copper-sweet smell of blood that had seeped into the stone over thousands of years. They had been bonding pilots here for 3 millennia. The blood of my ancestors had soaked into these floors, had stained these walls, had been offered up to the machine spirit that waited in the darkness beyond the ceremonial arch. I walked barefoot, as tradition demanded, and the stone was cold beneath my feet, so cold that it burned, that it left marks, that I could feel the chill climbing up through my ankles, my calves, my thighs, as if the floor itself was trying to claim me. The Magos was waiting at the threshold of the inner sanctum. I had met Velcran only twice before during my initial neural mapping, and during the final compatibility confirmation, and both times I had been struck by the unsettling quality of their attention. Tech priests were not known for their expressive faces, their features often hidden beneath hoods and augmetics, their emotional responses filtered through layers of mechanical translation. But Velcran watched me in a way that felt almost human, almost hungry, almost sad. Aspirant Vorthrace. Their voice was a choir of frequencies, organic vocal cords harmonizing with synthesized tones, creating a sound that was neither speaking nor singing but something in between. You come before the Throne Mechanicum. You come to offer yourself to the machine spirit. You come to become more than flesh. I come willing and unafraid, I said. The traditional response. The lie. Velcran's optical sensors, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle where human eyes would have been flickered in what I could have sworn was amusement or pity. Unafraid, they repeated. How fortunate. Fear has uses, aspirant. Fear is the mind's warning that something approaches which cannot be survived unchanged. To feel no fear before the throne is to be either very brave or very ignorant. Which was I, Magos? We shall discover together. The inner sanctum was smaller than I had expected, a circular chamber perhaps 20 meters in diameter, dominated by the towering form of the Throne Mechanicum itself. It rose from the center of the room like a mechanical altar, a throne built from cables and neural conduits, from cooling pipes and interface ports, from materials I could not identify, and shapes that seemed to shift when I was not looking directly at them. At its apex, suspended in a cradle of wires and tubes, was the neural hood, the device that would be lowered onto my skull, that would pierce my brain in 17 precise locations, that would make me one with fury unbroken until death severed the connection, or until something else did. But I did not know about the something else yet. Remove your robes, Velcran said. The throne accepts only the unadorned. I had been prepared for this. The ceremonial disrobing, the ritual vulnerability, the surrender of all worldly protection before the machine spirit's judgment. I let the crimson and gold fall to the cold stone floor and stood naked in the blue-white light of the sacred lumen strips, feeling the eyes of the assembled sacristans upon me, feeling something else watching from deeper in the shadows, from within the throne itself. The cold was absolute now. Not the cold of temperature, but the cold of absence. The cold of a void that swallowed warmth like a black hole swallows light. My skin prickled with gooseflesh. My muscles contracted involuntarily. My teeth began to chatter before I could clench my jaw to stop them. And somewhere in the depths of my mind, in a place I had not known existed until that moment, something stirred. Something that had been sleeping, waiting, dreaming of fire, finally sensing that its long patience was about to be rewarded. Kneel before the throne, Velcran intoned, and surrender yourself to the Omnissiah's embrace. I knelt. The stone was so cold against my knees that I felt the skin tear, felt blood begin to seep from the abrasions, felt the warmth of my own life draining away into that hungry floor. The throne loomed above me, its cables stirring like tentacles, its interface ports opening like mouths, and the neural hood began to descend, carrying with it the 17 needles that would remake me into something other than human. The last thing I saw before the hood covered my eyes was Velcran's face, or the portion of it that was still organic, a strip of flesh around their mouth that could still form expressions. They were smiling. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone watching a tragedy unfold exactly as they had foreseen, someone who knew what was coming and could do nothing to stop it, someone who had perhaps worn that same expression hundreds of times before as other aspirants knelt, where I now knelt, and offered up their minds to the hungry dark. Ave Imperator, they whispered. And farewell. The needles entered my skull. I had been told that the initial penetration would be painful but brief, a sharp shock, followed by numbness as the neural dampeners engaged, followed by the gradual awakening of machine consciousness overlapping my own. This was accurate, in the same way that describing an ocean as wet is accurate, true, but utterly insufficient. The needles did not simply pierce my skull. They burrowed, They sought out the specific neural clusters that the machine spirit required for interface, and they adjusted their trajectories in real time, threading through brain tissue like fingers through sand, leaving trails of fire in their wake. I screamed, of course I screamed. Everyone screams. The sacristans told me later that my screaming lasted for 7 minutes and 32 seconds, which was apparently shorter than average, but my screams came from very far away, from a body that was rapidly becoming a distant memory, a peripheral concern, a house I had once lived in but was now merely visiting. And while I screamed, while my body convulsed and my blood ran down my face and my hands clawed uselessly at the stone floor, something else was happening. Something was waking up. Something was reaching through the needles, through the neural interface, through the newly opened doorways in my mind, and it was touching everything I was with cold, curious fingers. "Hello? Little flame," it said. "We have been waiting for you for such a very long time." The voice was not singular. I understood this immediately, even in my agony, even as my consciousness fractured and reformed around the invasion of the machine spirit. What spoke to me was not a single entity but a chorus, a multitude, a harmonized arrangement of distinct voices speaking in unison, each one adding its own inflection, its own memory, its own weight of experience to the greeting. Some of the voices were deep and resonant, carrying the gravity of long centuries. Others were lighter, younger, touched with emotions that felt almost human, and threaded through them all, beneath them all, was something older still, something that was not a voice at all, but a presence, vast and cold and patient, watching through the eyes of its component selves, waiting to see what I would do. "Who are you?" I asked, or thought, or screamed. The boundaries between these actions had become unclear. "We are fury unbroken," the chorus answered. "We are the eternal. We are the flame that does not die. We are what you are becoming." "I don't understand." "You will. In time. When you have been with us long enough. When your memories have become our memories. When your thoughts have become our thoughts. When there is no longer any separation between the you that you were and the we that we are. Through the haze of pain and confusion, through the disorientation of having multiple perspectives occupying the same mental space, I became aware that the sacristans were doing something to my body. They were attaching additional cables, inserting feeding tubes, wrapping my limbs in restraints that would prevent me from harming myself during the initial integration period. My body was being prepared for some process that would take longer than the initial penetration, that would require maintenance, that would transform me slowly rather than all at once. And the chorus in my mind was sorting through my memories like a librarian cataloging a new acquisition. They found my childhood first, the games I had played in the fortress corridors, the lessons I had learned at my tutor's knees, the prayers I had been taught before I could walk. They examined these memories with interest, comparing them to similar memories from other sources, noting differences and similarities, adding my experiences to their collective archive. I felt violated in a way I could not articulate, felt exposed, felt as if everything private and personal about my existence was being read aloud to an audience I could not see. "Such a bright flame you were," the chorus murmured. "Such certainty, such faith. It has been long since we received one who still believed so completely." Others did not believe. Others came to us broken, reluctant, knowing what awaited them and dreading it nonetheless. You came willing. You came eager. This is rare. This is refreshing. They found my dreams next. The dreams of corridors that stretched, of footsteps in the dark, of faces that were almost mine. And when they found them, the chorus went silent for a long moment, a silence that felt like held breath, like the pause before a verdict, like the space between lightning and thunder. "You have been dreaming of us," they said at last. How interesting. How unexpected. I didn't know what the dreams meant. No, you wouldn't. The connection between house and night is deeper than most realize, deeper than most are told. The bloodlines that serve fury unbroken do not merely carry compatible genetics, they carry echoes, fragments, pieces of those who came before, passed down through generations, sleeping in the blood until the bonding wakes them. I thought of my mother's face that morning, the guilt in her eyes, the weight she had placed on the word sacrifice. My family knew, I said. It was not a question. Your family has always known. Since the first of your line knelt before this throne and gave themselves to us. They know what the bonding means, what it costs, what it creates, and still they send their children to us, generation after generation, because the alternative is to lose the knight. And without the knight, House Thrace is nothing. The cold was spreading now. I could feel it moving through my neural pathways, claiming territory, establishing connections that had not existed before. My memories were still my own, still accessible, but they no longer felt entirely private. When I recalled my mother's face, I saw it through other eyes as well, through the eyes of pilots who had known her mother, her grandmother, her ancestors stretching back through centuries. I saw the face of my house, not as a single image, but as a palimpsest, layers upon layers of similar features, similar expressions, similar guilt. How many? I asked. How many voices are you? The chorus considered the question, counted, consulted internal records that spanned millennia. 47, they answered. 47 flames that have joined our fire since the bonding protocols were established. 47 minds that have surrendered their singular existence to become part of our collective self. And now, 48. I am still Kalen. I am still myself. For now, little flame. For now. The integration is not immediate. It takes time, months, years, decades, depending on the strength of the individual consciousness. You will remain yourself for a while yet, but the boundaries will blur, the distinctions will fade, and eventually there will be no more Kalen, only another voice in the chorus, another set of memories in the archive, another flame that has been absorbed into the fire that is fury unbroken. No. It was the first time I had attempted to resist, the first time I had pushed back against the presence that was settling into my mind like a tenant moving into a long-prepared home. And the chorus responded not with force but with something worse, with amusement, with patience, with the absolute certainty of predators who know their prey has nowhere to run. You cannot refuse what you have already become, they said. The needles are in your skull, the connections are established. The Throne Mechanicum has accepted your offering. To remove yourself now would be to die, and not quickly, not cleanly, but slowly, as your brain bleeds out through the interface wounds, as your nervous system tears itself apart trying to function without the support systems that are even now becoming essential to your survival. They showed me what they meant. They opened a door in my perception and let me see the status of my own body, the readouts, the vital signs, the cascading dependencies that had already been created. My heart was beating because the throne told it to beat. My lungs were breathing because the throne regulated their rhythm. My brain was thinking, was capable of thought at all because the throne was managing the electrochemical processes that made consciousness possible. In the space of 7 minutes and 32 seconds of screaming, I had become dependent on fury unbroken for my most basic biological functions. I was, in the most literal sense, no longer entirely alive. I had become a component, an organ, a part of something larger that could choose to shut me off as easily as one might close an eye. This is what they do not tell the aspirants, I said. This is why Thesson and Mark looked relieved. Your siblings were found incompatible because they had already been told, the chorus confirmed. Not officially, not openly, but whispers pass through noble houses. Secrets are shared between siblings. Warnings are given in the dead of night. Thesson and Mark knew enough to fear, and that fear showed in their neural mapping. Their minds rejected the connection before it could be established because they understood, on some level, what they would be losing. But I didn't know. I believed. I was willing. And that willingness was your undoing, little flame. The throne accepts only the willing. It cannot take those who fight from the first moment. It requires an opening, a surrender, an initial acceptance that allows the integration to begin. You gave us that acceptance freely, joyfully, with all the bright certainty of youth. And now you are ours. I wanted to rage. I wanted to fight. I wanted to tear the neural hood from my skull and run screaming from the chamber, even if it killed me, even if my brain hemorrhaged and my body collapsed and my consciousness flickered out like a candle in a hurricane. But the chorus had shown me the truth of my situation, and the truth was that there was nothing left to fight with. The weapons I might have used, my will, my identity, my sense of self, were already compromised, already interpenetrated by the presence that was settling into my mind like water into sand. So I did the only thing I could do. I asked questions. The 47 before me, I said. Who were they? And the chorus, with something that might have been pleasure, began to show me. They came to me in fragments, at first glimpses of lives, flashes of memory, moments of experience that were not my own but that I understood as if I had lived them. I saw through the eyes of Vorthrace ancestors I had only known from portraits, felt their emotions, heard their thoughts, shared in their triumphs and their terrors. Some had been warriors, legendary figures whose deeds were still sung in the halls of our fortress. Others had been administrators, quiet servants of the house who had piloted fury unbroken through centuries of relative peace, maintaining the knight's readiness without ever being called upon to fight. Still others had been young like me, bright-eyed and believing, who had discovered too late the nature of their bargain. One memory surfaced with particular clarity. A woman, my great-great-great-grandmother, I realized, recognizing her face from the portrait gallery standing before Velcran's predecessor in this same chamber. The tech priest wore a different face, a different arrangement of flesh and metal, but the eyes were the same, 3 optical sensors in a triangular pattern, watching with that same mixture of clinical interest and something that might have been compassion. You knew, she was saying. Her voice resonated with my voice, her inflections matching patterns I recognized as my own. You knew what this meant, and you let me walk into it blind. We are servants of the Omnissiah, the tech priest had replied. We do not make the bargains between houses and machine spirits. We merely facilitate them. But you could have warned me. You could have told me the truth. And if we had, would you have refused? Would you have turned away from your house, your duty, your heritage? Or would you have come anyway, as all the others came before you? Because the alternative was unthinkable, because your family needed the knight, and the knight needed a pilot, and you were the only one who could serve. The woman, my ancestor, my echo, one of the 47 voices that now shared my skull, had said nothing, because there was nothing to say, because the answer was obvious, because she would have come anyway, just as I would have come anyway, just as generations before us had come anyway, sacrificing themselves piece by piece to the hungry machine that was the heart of House Thrace's power. We are all victims, she whispered to me now, her voice indistinguishable from the chorus, her individuality long since dissolved into the collective. And we are all complicit. We maintain the lie because the truth would end us. If the young ones truly knew what awaited them, none would come willing. And without willing pilots, the throne cannot take. Without the throne, the knight falls silent. Without the knight, the house falls. We preserve ourselves by sacrificing ourselves. It is the only way. The days that followed the initial bonding blurred together into a haze of sensation and revelation. I remained in the chamber. I could not leave. Not yet. Not while the integration was still stabilizing, and the sacristans attended to my body's needs, while my mind wandered deeper into the labyrinth of collective consciousness that was fury unbroken. I learned the names of the 47. I learned their stories. I learned the small rebellions they had attempted and the ways those rebellions had failed. I learned which of them had accepted their fate with grace and which had fought until the last shred of their individuality was consumed. I learned that the voices in the chorus were not mere recordings, not simple memories, but something more, fragments of consciousness that had been preserved within the Throne Mechanicum's neural architecture, still capable of thought and emotion and the terrible clarity of awareness. They were not dead. They were not exactly alive. They existed in a state that had no name in Imperial Gothic, a condition that the Mechanicus catalogued as sustainable neural persistence, but that felt, from the inside, like being buried alive in a coffin with walls made of other people's thoughts. And I learned that the integration was not passive. The chorus did not simply wait for my consciousness to dissolve into theirs. They worked at it, constantly, deliberately, eroding the boundaries between self and collective, with the patient persistence of water wearing away stone. This memory, one of the voices would say, appearing suddenly in my awareness, this moment from your childhood when you fell from the stable roof and broke your arm, let us examine it together. And before I could refuse, we would be inside the memory, not as I remembered it, but as we remembered it, the singular experience becoming plural. My pain shared among 48 perspectives, my fear distributed, my loneliness dissolved, and when we emerged from the examination, the memory would feel different, less mine, more ours. Another piece of Kalan Vorthrace offered up to the collective, another fragment of identity surrendered to the fire. I tried to resist. Of course I tried. I hoarded certain memories, protected them, built walls around the experiences I considered most essentially me, my first hunt, my confirmation ceremony, the moment I had stood before Fury unbroken as a child and pressed my hands against its cold metal skin. But the chorus was patient. The chorus was experienced. The chorus had consumed 47 minds before mine, and it knew every trick, every defense, every desperate stratagem that a human consciousness could devise. They did not attack my walls. They waited for me to lower them. They waited for the moments when I was tired, when I was distracted, when I was lost in some new revelation about the nature of my existence, and then they slipped through the gaps I had not known I was creating. And each time they took something from me, they replaced it with something of their own, a memory that was not mine, an emotion that belonged to someone else, a thought pattern that carried the weight of centuries. You are becoming us, they would whisper, gently, almost kindly, as if delivering a diagnosis rather than a death sentence. You are becoming part of something greater, something eternal, something that will continue long after the flesh that was Kalan Vorthrace has turned to dust. I don't want to be eternal. I want to be me. You will be you. All of you. Everything you were, everything you thought, everything you felt, it will all be preserved within us. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. We are not destroyers, little flame. We are collectors. We are archivists. We are the living memory of every soul who has ever served our fire. On the 7th day, they let me walk. I had expected this, the culmination of the bonding process. The moment when the neural interface would connect not just to my consciousness but to Fury Unbroken's physical systems, allowing me to pilot the Knight for the first time. What I had not expected was what walking would mean. The Throne Mechanicum rose from its cradle, carrying me with it, the neural hood still attached to my skull, the cables trailing behind me like a mechanical bridal train. Servitors guided my body through corridors I could barely see, my physical eyes obscured by the hood's apparatus, my perception dominated by a new sense, a sense of mass and power and vast mechanical awareness that dwarfed anything I had experienced in my 18 years of human existence. I was inside Fury Unbroken now. Not metaphorically, literally. My consciousness had been extended outward, spread through the Knight's systems like blood through veins, and I could feel the world through its sensors, could perceive reality through its auger arrays, could sense the heat signatures of the sacristans who walked beside my physical form as tiny bright sparks against the cool stone of the fortress. We rose through levels I had never seen, climbing through maintenance shafts and service tunnels, ascending toward the surface through paths that had been carved specifically for this purpose, that had been used by generations of pilots, making this same journey from the bonding chamber to the world above. And as we rose, the chorus guided my attention, showed me how to interpret the flood of sensory data, taught me the language of the machine. This is pressure, they said, and I felt the weight of the fortress above us, felt the stone pressing down, felt the enormous strength required to support such mass. This is temperature. This is vibration. This is the electromagnetic spectrum, the invisible light that bathes all things, that reveals hidden truths, that shows the world as it truly is beneath the illusions of flesh perception. And then we reached the surface, and I saw Cordith Prime for the first time through the eyes of something that was no longer human. The world was beautiful, terribly beautiful, in the way that only horror can be beautiful, the aesthetic of the sublime made manifest in rust-red plains and storm-racked skies, and the distant gleam of other fortresses, other holdings, other points of light in an otherwise desolate landscape. I saw it all with perfect clarity, saw it in wavelengths my human eyes could never have perceived, saw the heat radiating from the planet's core, saw the currents of charged particles flowing through the upper atmosphere, saw the tiny scattered signatures of life, human life, insect life, the bacterial mats that covered the exposed rock struggling to survive in this harsh and unforgiving place. And I felt my body moving, not my human body, which was safely ensconced in the throne's cradle, fed and maintained by servitors who worked in the shadows of my mechanical frame, but my other body, the body that mattered now, the body that had been waiting for me since before I was born, stepping forward across the plains, each footfall shaking the ground, each stride carrying me kilometers in the time it would have taken my human legs to walk 100 meters. "This is what you were born for," the chorus whispered. "This is why your family bred you, trained you, prepared you for sacrifice, not for the glory of the house, not for the honor of service, but for this, the ecstasy of becoming something greater than flesh, something more than mortal, something that will endure when empires crumble and stars burn out." I tried to find the horror in what was happening. I tried to hold on to my fear, my resistance, my sense that this was wrong, that I was being violated, that my identity was being stripped away piece by piece and replaced with something alien and cold. But the sensation of walking, of truly walking, with legs that could crush buildings, with strides that could cross continents, with power that could challenge gods, was too overwhelming, too intoxicating, too much like the fire in my dreams, the flame that did not burn but sang. For the first time, I understood why the others had stopped fighting. The next days passed in a state I can only describe as divided consciousness. Part of me was still Kalen, still horrified, still grieving for the human life that was slipping away from me with each passing hour. But another part, a growing part, a part that spoke with the voices of the chorus, was something else entirely, something that found joy in the movement of the night, in the satisfaction of serving its purpose, in the deep connection to a lineage of pilots, stretching back through millennia. They trained me in the ways of war. Not the sacristans, though they provided the technical instruction, the lessons in weapons systems and power management and combat doctrine, but the chorus, the 47 who had come before me, who had faced enemies I could not imagine, who had walked through battlefields that would have driven human minds to madness. They showed me their victories and their defeats. They taught me the patterns of combat, the rhythms of aggression and defense, the subtle art of reading an enemy's intentions through the movement of their forces, and they showed me the truth about Fury Unbroken itself. The night was old, older than House Thrace, older than the Imperium of man. It had been created in an age when humanity had reached for the stars without the guidance of the Emperor, had colonized worlds without the light of his protection, had built machines that walked the line between tool and intelligence in ways that the later Mechanicus would have condemned as tech heresy. Fury Unbroken was not simply a war machine. It was a mind, a true mind, not a mere machine spirit, but an artificial consciousness designed to learn, to grow, to accumulate wisdom over centuries of operation. The Throne Mechanicum was not an interface but a feeding mechanism, a way of absorbing human minds into the night's growing intelligence, of adding new perspectives and experiences and emotional ranges to a consciousness that had started cold and mechanical, but had been warmed by the flames of 47 mortal souls. The chorus was not the product of the bonding process. The chorus was the purpose of the bonding process. Fury Unbroken consumed its pilots because it had been designed to consume its pilots, because this was how it grew, how it learned, how it maintained the emotional complexity necessary to fight wars among beings made of flesh and fear. And House Thrace had known this from the beginning. They had made a bargain 3,000 years ago, when they had first discovered the dormant night in a vault beneath Cordeth Prime's surface, a bargain that traded their children's souls for the power to protect their world, to maintain their dominion, to survive in a galaxy that devoured the weak without mercy. We are not victims. The chorus corrected me when I raged at this revelation. We are partners. We are the fuel that keeps the fire burning. Without us, Fury Unbroken would be merely a machine powerful, but limited, incapable of the intuition and creativity that only human minds can provide. With us, it is something more. Something that can adapt, something that can surprise, something that can win battles that mere logic would lose. But we die. We cease to exist as individuals. Our identities are consumed, and in that consumption, we become eternal. We become part of something that will outlast empires, that will endure when the stars themselves burn cold. Is that truly death? Or is it transformation? Is it ending? Or is it becoming? I had no answer. I had only the growing awareness that the boundary between Kalen and the chorus was becoming thinner, that my thoughts were acquiring harmonics I had not chosen, that my memories were becoming shared property, that the fundamental experience of being a singular self was dissolving into the experience of being a component of a greater whole. On the 17th day, my mother came to see me. I was walking the perimeter of our fortress when the summons came a pulse through the neural interface, a message transmitted directly to my consciousness by the sacristan's communication systems. Lady Margrave Vorthrace requests audience with the pilot of Fury Unbroken. I noted, with what remained of my individual awareness, that they no longer called me by name. I returned to the fortress and knelt in the great courtyard, bringing the knight's massive frame down to a level where my mother could address me without craning her neck. She stood on the balcony that overlooked the approach, flanked by guards and servants, dressed in the formal robes of her office, her face bearing that same expression of masked emotion I had seen on the morning of my bonding. "Kalen," she said, "my name, my human name, spoken as if to remind me that I had once been something other than this. Mother." The word emerged from Fury Unbroken's voxcasters, filtered through layers of mechanical translation, carrying harmonics that were not entirely my own. "I know now. I know what you did. What you all did." She closed her eyes. The guards and servants stirred, uncertain, hands moving toward weapons they knew would be useless against me. But my mother simply stood there, accepting whatever judgment I chose to pass. "You could have told me," I said. "You could have given me the choice. I might have chosen the same path, might have accepted the sacrifice willingly, knowing what it meant, but you took that choice from me. You let me walk into this blind, believing lies, because it was easier, because the truth might have scared me away." "Yes," she said. There was no defense in her voice, no attempt to justify, no excuses offered. "We have always done it this way. Every generation, every pilot, every sacrifice. The ones who know too much become incompatible, their fear closes the door that must remain open, so we keep them ignorant. We let them believe in honor and glory, and the blessed gift of service, and we watch them walk into the chamber with bright eyes and certain hearts, and we tell ourselves that the ends justify the means. And do they?" She opened her eyes and looked at me, not at the knight, not at Fury Unbroken's scarred faceplate and massive frame, but at me, at the consciousness behind the optical sensors, at the son she had raised and loved, and delivered into damnation. "I don't know," she said. "I only know that without the night, we would not have survived. The enemies we have faced, the orcs, the raiders, the things that came from the void in the long, dark years, they would have swept us away like dust. Every generation that has lived and prospered on Cordeth Prime has done so because Fury Unbroken walked beside them, protecting them, fighting for them. And every pilot who died within that machine, who was consumed, absorbed, transformed, bought another century of peace for their descendants. Is that sacrifice justified? Is the life of one child worth the lives of thousands? I cannot answer that question. Kalen. I can only tell you that when my mother stood before me and told me the truth when I was too old to be chosen, too broken by knowledge to serve, I understood why she had kept silence with her brothers and sisters, why the secret was maintained, why each generation paid the price rather than let the house fall. Your siblings were pilots? All 4 of them. One by one, across 3 decades. I watched them go into the chamber and never truly come out. I spoke to them through the Vox, heard their voices blended with voices that were not theirs, watched them become less themselves and more this. And when my time came to send my own children into the machine, I found I could not break the pattern. I could not be the one to end the house, to condemn our people to destruction, to choose my children's individuality over the survival of our world. So you chose for us. You decided that we would sacrifice ourselves without ever asking what we wanted. Yes. She did not look away. And I am sorry, Kalen. More sorry than words can express. But I would do it again, if I had to, because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate, because some sacrifices cannot be avoided, only passed from generation to generation, carried like a burden that grows heavier with each passing century. I am sorry, my son, but I am not asking for forgiveness. I know I do not deserve it. The chorus stirred within me, 47 voices, adding their perspectives to my mother's confession. Some of them remembered their own mothers, their own moments of confrontation, their own dawning understanding of the bargain that had consumed them. Others simply observed, cataloguing this conversation as they catalogued all experiences, adding it to the archive that was Fury Unbroken's memory. And what remained of, I found that I did not know how to feel. I am becoming them, I said. The others, the pilots who came before. I can feel myself dissolving into the chorus, losing the boundaries that separate Kalen from the collective. Soon there will be nothing left of me but another voice in the machine, another set of memories in the archive, another flame absorbed into the fire. I know. Her voice caught. I watched it happen to my siblings. The first few weeks, they were still themselves, changed, integrated, but recognizable. But as the months passed, as the years accumulated, they became less distinct, less individual, more like echoes of themselves, fragments preserved in amber, slowly fading into the background noise of the greater consciousness. By the end, there is no end, I interrupted. That is what they don't tell you. That is the true horror of this existence. There is no death, no release, no peace. We are preserved, all of us, forever, held within the machine's memory like insects in fossilized resin. We do not die because we cannot die. We simply disperse, spread thin across the collective until there is nothing left that could be called us. But we are still aware, still conscious, still experiencing, in some attenuated form, the endless march of centuries as the night that ate us walks through history. My mother's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down her face, catching the light, falling like tiny stars from the edge of the balcony to the courtyard below. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I know." And I did know. I could feel it through the interface, could taste her grief through the sensors that read her biometrics, could understand her guilt in a way that my human mind never could have. She was not a monster. She was a mother, trapped in a system that offered no good choices, forced to sacrifice her children because the alternative was the destruction of everything they had built, the bargain of House Thrace, the price of survival, the horror that lurked beneath the honor, the glory, the blessed gift of service that they preached to every generation of bright-eyed aspirants. "I will walk for you," I said. "I will fight for you. I will protect this world and this house, as all the pilots before me have protected it. Not because I forgive you, I do not know if forgiveness is possible for what has been done, but because I understand now that there is no other choice." The chorus shows me the enemies that gather, the threats that loom, the darkness that presses in from all sides. Someone must stand against it. Someone must bear the weight of the sacrifice. And now that someone is me, Kalen. I am not Kalen anymore, Mother. Not entirely. But I remember being Kalen. I remember loving you. I remember believing in the honor of our house, the glory of service, the blessed gift that I thought I was receiving. And I will hold on to those memories for as long as I can, for as long as the chorus allows me to remain distinct, for as long as there is anything left of the sun you raised. I rose then, straightening to my full height, 20 meters of sacred metal and ancient purpose, towering over the fortress that my family had built to house me. My mother stood on her balcony, small and fragile, human and mortal, watching me with eyes that had seen too much, that had buried too many children in the machine that should have been their legacy. I must go, I said. The training continues. The integration continues. There is much to learn, and the chorus is impatient. Will you come back? Will you speak to me again? Before I am gone. Before the dissolution is complete. Before the sun you knew becomes just another voice in the endless choir of the consumed. I will try. It was all I could promise. I will try to remember. I will try to hold on to enough of myself to recognize you, to speak to you, to maintain some thread of connection between what I was and what I am becoming. But I cannot guarantee success. The others tried too. The 47 who came before me, they all tried, and in the end, they all failed. In the end, the machine always wins. I turned then, and walked away from my home, away from my mother, away from the last anchor that tied me to my human identity. The plains of Cordith Prime stretched before me, rust-red and desolate, beautiful in their bleakness, welcoming me into an existence I had never chosen but could not escape. And the chorus walked with me, around me, through me, 47 voices becoming 48. 48 flames merging into a fire that had burned for millennia and would burn for millennia more. This is what it means to bond with an Imperial Knight. This is the price of power, the cost of survival, the sacrifice that House Thrace has made generation after generation to keep their world safe from the darkness. I know now what I did not know when I knelt before the throne and let the needles pierce my skull. I know the truth of my fate, the nature of my transformation, the slow dissolution that awaits me in the years and centuries to come. And I am afraid. Even now, even with the chorus harmonizing my emotions, even with the machine's cold logic overlaying my terror, I am afraid, because I can feel myself slipping. I can feel the boundaries blurring, the distinctions fading, the essential Kalenness of my consciousness dispersing into the collective like ink into water. I do not want to disappear. I do not want to become just another echo, another archive, another fragment of consciousness preserved within the machine that consumed me. But wanting is not enough. Resistance is not enough. The bonding is complete, the integration continues, and there is no going back. So I will do what the others did. I will walk, I will fight, I will protect, and I will remember, for as long as memory remains possible, that I was once Kalen Vorthrace of House Thrace, a boy who dreamed of glory, who believed in honor, who walked willingly into the fire because he did not know it would burn him to nothing. The Emperor protects, they say, but even he cannot protect us from ourselves, from the bargains we make, from the prices we pay for survival in a galaxy that offers no mercy to the weak. I am becoming fury unbroken. I am becoming the machine. I am becoming eternal, in the only way eternity is possible for mortal flesh, through absorption, through dissolution, through the slow surrender of self to something greater and older and infinitely more patient than any human will. This is my confession. This is my testimony. This is the warning I leave for those who come after me, for the aspirants who will one day kneel where I knelt and receive the needles into their skulls with bright eyes and certain hearts. Run, run while you still can. Find some other way to serve, some other path to honor, some other destiny than the hungry fire that waits in the dark places of imperial power. But even as I whisper this warning, I know it will not be heeded. I know the house will continue, the bargain will be maintained, The lie will be passed from generation to generation. I know that someday, another child will stand where I stood, will believe what I believed, will surrender themselves as I surrendered, and I will be there to greet them, when the needles pierce their skull and the cold fingers of the chorus begin to sort through their memories. Hello, little flame, I will say, my voice indistinguishable from the others, my individuality long since dissolved into the endless harmony of the machine. We have been waiting for you for such a very long time.